What is going on, Badger fans? Let's talk about Wisconsin-Nebraska basketball.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. I think I only have 2 hotel shows left until I get back into the home base, which is going to be nice. We got to talk about Wisconsin-Nebraska basketball as much as maybe all of us maybe don't want to, or maybe we do. I don't know. Let's talk about it. First, today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experience to help you achieve your 2023 goals. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, let's bring on our good friend Justin. We didn't do a show after the Nebraska-Wisconsin game. I had to record it and come back and watch it. Y'all kind of assured me, don't stress it. Don't spend too much time rewatching that one, Ryan.
That's a kind way of putting it. It was an ugly game. Wisconsin got up, played a really clean or good first half for them offensively, and basically ran it up a little bit in the second half, got it to 17, and then proceeded to hand it back as quickly as they racked it up. So Connor had a really good start to the game. I think he started out 4 for 4. Mm-hmm. That was about the high point, and then he actually dropped off quite a bit too. I mean, I don't know if he got tired or what, but he didn't shoot very well. The team just wasn't good overall. Like we had a bad game. The big men, I believe, Crowell and Wall were a combined 5 of 19, which when you're shooting from 5 feet away, that you can't finish with that percentage. When you're under 25% from that range, like you got to at least begin to the line at a high clip.
Yeah, Crowell's interesting, right? In the first half of that game, I think it was the first half, he had one of his best moves of the year. It was down to the shot clock. He spun right, spun back baseline, little sky hook shot over 2 people. And then he'll just proceed to miss his next 4. You know, if you go down the Badgers of this year problems, right? And this loss was all of them, like long scoring drought, check. No free throws, check, right? Lack of defensive intensity for the entirety of the game, check. You know, it's just like everything that's hurt the Badgers this year. Nothing off the bench. I think we had 5 bench points. I think Davis had 5, and that was it.
Lack of post scoring, lack of ability to drive to the rim.
Check. Not a very good shot at the end of the game to potentially win it. Check. Double check. Yeah. Right? Like everything we've talked about, this game was a microcosm of it. And this was a game they needed, Justin. Like you have this season is still there to at least get to March. It's not anymore.
Yeah. This is a killer. Like if Wisconsin was playing good basketball, you could say, well, there's a chance maybe they upset Purdue or something like that. This team, as they're playing right now, is not going to hang with Purdue. They're just not. Crowell can't hang with Edey as it is, and you need somebody outside of Crowell to be somebody you can lean on for scoring, because Crowell's going to be exhausted trying to deal with Edey if he can stay on the court. So you're going to look at that game. You're not going to get post scoring unless Wall plays the game of his life. And you're going to have the other guys just absolutely crush it from the outside. And we saw kind of what happens with that in this game if it doesn't keep going. Like they were hot to start. I think they started like 8 of 15 or something like that. And I think they hit 1 more 3 over the course of the rest of the game. And it shows, like, if you are a team that lives by the 3, you die by the 3. Like if you have to find a way. Teams that are like this lose games because they go into scoring droughts, exactly like Wisconsin did, and can't find a way to manufacture points in any other way. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, there's nothing else they can go to your point. There's nobody on the team that's getting downhill to the rack. They're not getting to the free throw line. They're not a great offensive rebounding team, partially by choice because they get back in defensive transition. They don't push the ball in transition. Their post game disappeared. There's literally nowhere else to go. And there's no spark off the bench. Like this was always... Listen, again, it comes down to there's not enough bodies. Rajiv, a lot of people, not just Rajiv, wanted Connor in the starting lineup, but now there's nothing off the bench, right? Like I get it. I'm fine with. I've always said I'm fine with him starting, or I'm fine with him on the bench. But you're just creating a hole somewhere. This is just, to me, this is maybe the worst loss of the regular season that I can think of for Gard. This just happened.
You mean in his coaching career or as a head coach?
I don't know about 8 years because I would have to go back and look, but for Nebraska is not that good.
No, they're not. They're really not. Like I said earlier in the week, they gave up 93 points and lost by 20 plus to Michigan. So, I mean, that tells you what kind of team they are. They're not great. We let them back into the game. Sure.
Can I throw a question out there to you? And for everyone listening to, let me know in the comments as well. Did it surprise you at all that we gave up a 17-point lead? Because for me watching it didn't at all surprise me, even against Nebraska.
Every game that we've gotten a mid-teens lead on anybody, we've instantly given it right back all season long. Like, we're just incapable of holding that kind of lead. And a lot of it is because we just lack depth and we lack talent. Like, this team, there is nobody. I know we came into the season with people that were ranked as like all conference type guys. There's nobody that's an all conference player on this team. Like, they may get some honorable mention talk or whatever. There is nobody on this team that you can look at and say, we can lean on him when we need a bucket. That person can go get us a bucket. You would think that would be Wall, but he just hasn't been efficient this year. And people will go, well, he's injured. He wasn't super efficient when he was earlier in the year healthy. So, I mean, he is what he is. Like, there's nothing. Wall is a good player. He's not a great player. He is what he is. He's not a guy you want to be relying on to score 15 plus for you again. Can he do it on occasion? Yes, he can. Is he a guy that is comfortable with that role and knows how to do it and has a great feel on the offensive end? No, he's not.
Had 5 turnovers in this game too. Yeah. I think it was 5. Like, coming off a game where he was really good distributing the ball, you cannot turn the ball over 5 times if they're feeding it to you in the post. It's just it's just inexcusable for a team that doesn't score enough as it is. Another thing that's kind of interesting to me though, Justin, is even though this game really disappointed me because I'm kind of, me, like, I'm kind of an optimist fan as it is, and I was still in my head conjuring up ways they were going to get into the dance. And if you get into the dance, it's always fun. You can always make up some scenario where you win at least one game, right? It's just fun. And maybe it's interesting to me that everyone we all kind of agree this is a bad team or not a very good team in a bad year. Why do we keep getting upset over losses for a team that we all kind of know is bad, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, why are we that much frustrated? We knew this would happen to some degree.
Because the track record that we had previously had with Bo, fair or not, was that he consistently, even with a bad roster, would find a way to get it done. And even Gard with a bad roster has found some ways, had some seasons where he's gotten it done. And the issue is that we're so used to that being the case. Now, the other part of this, and this is the part that I personally have an issue with, is the Wisconsin's current roster issues were completely avoidable. They were all created by themselves. It's not like we had 3 guys that went to the NBA that jumped and were like, hey, we're ready to go. We should be leaving. And we're backfilling that. This was mostly recruiting misses. This was bad work in the portal. This was, and listen, I know we tried to get people in the portal this last year, but the issue is that nobody cares if you're a basketball coach in the NCAA that you tried your butt off to get those players. They care whether you got them or not. That's what it comes down to. You had holes you needed to fill, and you didn't get it done. And just like any other job for any other human being out there, if you don't get what's being requested of you or what you need to get done in order to be successful, that ultimately falls on you. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is this team is struggling. We knew what the issues were going to be coming in. And quite honestly, we didn't do the best work we could to fix it, even after we knew that we didn't have the quick fixes. Like, we talk about the lack of depth and stuff like that. We did nothing earlier in the year to develop depth. Like, the young guys that we probably should be relying on to give us at least 5-6 minutes here and there at this point in the season probably would be showing us a little bit of something, or at least glimpses. And we barely played them to start the year, and now none of them are ready. So they're just not playing.
You're talking Hodges, Ilver, McGee.
Yeah.
I think all 3 of them, maybe not as much McGee. I was higher on McGee coming into the year. He hasn't shown much, to be honest. No. But I absolutely think Hodges, if you had played him 5 minutes a game, to your point, like, I actually like some of the stuff he showed out there. Like, he's not coming in to be a star, but for 5 minutes a game, the wheels will not fall off.
Here's how I look at it. Frank fouled like crazy his freshman and sophomore year too. Like he was a guy that would go out there and rack up 2 fouls like instantly. That's what you're dealing with Hodges. And I think that he can go out there. He rebounds harder than almost anybody that we have. He plays physical. I haven't seen him make a lot of mistakes mentally out there. Now, is he going to, if he's playing a stud on the offensive end, he's going to struggle. But he's a freshman or sophomore. He's supposed to. So I don't know. Like I realize you don't have a lot of room for error with this team, but you're not helping yourself. Like if your goal is to develop these players, and if you think that they're going to help you next year, you better start working with them this year so that they have something to work with next year, because otherwise you're back to square one next year again. And with this, I kind of look at it and it's like, you could have Hodges ready to probably give you 10, 15 minutes next year if you were giving him at least somewhat regular play this year. And now he's not going to have that because that confidence isn't going to be there. Same thing with Ilver. Ilver needs the awareness. He has to play if you want him to stop making, like you watch him out there and it's like he has no clue what's going on around him out on the court. Like he's got blinders on and he's just in over his head. And you've got to give him a chance to gather it in and get a feel for it and get him on tape and say, I see what you're doing here, and this is what you should be doing in that situation, so that he can get a better understanding. Him sitting on the sideline and watching other guys play isn't going to fix that.
Can I also point out, first of all, I agree with you 100% on the roster construction issues. That's on Greg Gard. There's no excuses. Like there's a lot of things I'm pretty patient with Greg Gard, but there's also realities we got to call out. The roster this is on him, period. The other interesting thing to me is that there's a lot of talk about, well, Hodges and Ilver, these players just aren't ready. Well, who gave them the scholarship thinking that they would be able to play at this level, right? Like if you gave them a scholarship, you're saying that I think these are Big Ten caliber players, and now you're just refusing to play them. It's just you're creating your own issues, right? So I agree with you there. We do got to take a quick break. We're going to get them back. We got a couple comments, including my man Justin getting called out a little bit, although I think I did too, but they use the word Justin. We're going to get into some of the comments next, but first we do have to take a quick break for our friends of the show. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at LinkedIn. And again, we've talked about on multitudes of occasions how important it is to crush your hiring this year in 2023. As a small business owner, hiring manager, 2023 depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experience to help you achieve your goals. It's something I've used a lot, really to network and build my professional network, people I can reach out to if I need a job or if I need help or if I have questions. It's done a phenomenal job for me. My company uses it. LinkedIn Jobs helps you attract the most qualified candidates to your job. They have targeting tools to get the right people in the door. So you don't have to mess with anybody who has no business being there. It saves your time. It saves their time. Makes it easy to screen, rate applicants based on your job qualifications. And it's why small businesses continue to rate LinkedIn #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, let's get Justin back on here. I'm sorry for making my screen shake. This setup is just not my setup, and it just drives me nuts in some ways, y'all. So I appreciate it. By the way, the title of this show, Justin, is Ugh. That's what I titled it for the Nebraska debacle. Let's get into a couple comments here, Justin. I want to start with, we have a couple to get through. I would call them a little spicier, but I want to start with this one from Commandant Klink. Thank you for listening to the show all the time. Have you guys ever discussed the most important position in college basketball? To me, it is point guard. I 100% agree with the Commandant. Justin, I assume that's where you are, but I definitely want to
it's 100%. Like, other than there have been very few, and the guys who historically that we look at that have been the players that can control a game have almost all been point guards. Mm-hmm. The freaks that are out there, the guys like Michael Jordan and LeBron James, are outliers to everything else. That are guys that control the way a game is being played, guys that understand the moment and kind of have a feel for it. It's almost exclusively a point guard thing. Yep. And that is why they are so important. And you have to have somebody that truly understands what they're doing out there and the moment and what needs to be done in the situation. they have the most pressure on them of anybody on the court.
Yeah, I agree, especially at the college level. If you don't have that ball handler decision maker, you're in a lot of trouble. All right, let's get to this one here, Justin. This is one I sent to you. This is from Shyam. I apologize if I mispronounced the name. And by the way, we got one from Joey P and one from Shyam, who both had a lot of content. I've said this before. I'm limited to 200 characters in what I can put up here. So I have to really paraphrase. Don't feel like I'm trying to cut off your thoughts on this. He had a lot in his comment, but I cut out part of it here. Can you explain to me why we talked a lot about end of game situations, Chucky Hepburn taking some of the shots he takes? Shyam says, can you explain why every coach does the same thing in late game situations? ISO for your best ball handler, scorer, off the bounce. It's not like Greg Gard is the only one that does this. He goes on to say it's a way you control the clock with this. You're not going to have a turnover. End of game situations, running a play runs more risk because you can have a turnover. The referee's going to swallow his whistle, et cetera, et cetera. Justin, thoughts on this comment here?
Well, ideally what happens in that situation is whoever you have with the ball at the top of the key, the goal there is to control the situation. You want to get the shot on your terms. It doesn't mean that it has to be an ISO. I mean, you ideally that person's going to run whatever is going to happen on that, but it could be a kick out to somebody else for a shot. It could be like you could have him come downhill off a screen, and if you pull up if the center pulls up, you might get an easy dunk or whatever from somebody else. Or we've seen plenty of times where there's a play that's run off of that, but it's almost always going to start the way that it is, where you're going to have an ISO situation at the top of the key, and you're either going to run a set off of it late in the shot clock to basically neutralize the clock as being an option for the other team to get the ball back. But yeah, it's always going to start that way. Now, whether or not that player chooses, there's not a lot of guys that are capable of doing it. We see a lot of bad shots. It's not exclusive to Wisconsin, but we see a lot of bad end of game shots. The thing that's a bigger deal with Wisconsin is we've had situations where Wisconsin doesn't even get a shot off in the past when we've watched this team. And that's why still watching it now is so frustrating, because it's like we've seen it, how awful it can be. And yet we've never learned from that like more times than not, this situation is going to play out poorly for you. Wisconsin doesn't have the individual talent to have somebody running ISO and winning in that situation.
Yeah, and I'd piggyback onto that as well, because I get, in a perfect world, I get it. Like, if there's 20 seconds left, you can run ISO, you can absolutely get the last shot, you don't risk a turnover, but Chucky's not great in that situation. You look at the shots we've gotten just recently, that shot against Nebraska is a terrible shot in that situation. Nebraska won that possession. Yeah. It's just a terrible shot. And here's one of my big questions with this. And Shyam, if you're watching the show, man, let me know what you think on this too as well. But why did we take a timeout in that situation if you're just going to end up with that same ISO situation? Because if you take a timeout, right, because Gard took that timeout with about 20 seconds left, that allows Nebraska to put in their best defensive unit if they want to. And if all we did out of the timeout was go right back to the same ISO situation at the top of the key and settle for a 20, a 3-pointer 3 feet behind why even take a timeout? Why let the defense set up? Why let them substitute in their best defenders, defensive rebounders, right? None of that to me, that doesn't make sense. If you're going to go ISO, just let the clock run down. Don't take a timeout. And then you need to get something that makes more sense if you want to ISO it, right? And we've seen this script again and again and again. It's not working right now. So I'm not saying you put in an elaborate play, because you can throw the ball away. You don't want to have a turnover in that situation, but probably more than that last possession there was Connor with a faux screen. There's really no action, and we're just relying on Chucky, who's not great against a big-time athlete on the perimeter, to pull up from deep. It's a low percentage shot, and if you're a coach, I think you have to, if you have a really good team, you coach different. If you have a kind of a mediocre team, you have to coach more on the edges, right? You have to have something there that allows Chucky to get a better shot. He needs more help in that situation, is my point.
Well, we've seen in the past where we've done this and been successful with it. When we had our Final Four teams, we would ISO Decker on the wing all the time. Mm-hmm. He was so long that most defenders could not handle him when he went around them for the drive. Like, when you can extend like that, it's nearly impossible to block it unless weak side help's coming over to take it out.
We did it with Davis too, right? Davis, we ISO'd a lot. And it was fine. Koenig was a better ISO player because he was a little quicker than Hepburn, and he could shoot a little. He could get that shot off quicker, create space a little easier. I don't know. It's a little frustrating to me. And there's no great answer is the other part of this, right? We talked about offensively. There's there's no great answer.
This team isn't a good scoring team, period. It's just not.
Another question here from Joey P. Again, we've talked about Connor needs more shots, but Joey P mentions, and again, I had to paraphrase this, so I apologize, Joey. I find it a bit interesting about how you guys talk about Connor. You guys say the answer out loud to why he doesn't get more shots. The ball handling's not strong. He's not a creator. Joey went on to say, you guys are talking about the answer and still wondering about the question.
I disagree with that, to be quite honest. I think that there are ways. Listen, the biggest way that you can help Connor get easy shots in this is with how hard teams are coming out on him is to back screen, is to give him cuts down the lane like he's been doing all season long. That is where you set it. You basically make a defense start to play him a little bit more straight up by simply making it known that he's not just going to sit there and jack up threes the whole time. And Connor is a capable scorer inside the 3-point line. Mm-hmm. He's got a great teardrop that he throws up. He's a guy who's pretty good in the mid-range. Now, is he perfect? He's not the player he's going to be in a couple years, and he's not a guy that I want taking his man. He's definitely not an ISO player to what we were just talking about yet, because he's not confident in his handle enough to take a man off the dribble. That will change probably with time. He'll get more comfortable with it. I think that he's capable of being at least an average ball handler at the college level. It's just something he's going to have to tighten up and get stronger with.
Yeah, no, I agree with your point about finding more ways to free him up inside. He's a pretty good scorer around the rim for his youth and his kind of lack of girth. He had a nice drive. I think it was against Penn State.
He's really good with his body.
Yeah, where he got into somebody, made a nice layup. I think you can do more with him. The only thing I'd add on, Joey, is I think you're right. Like the efficiency will take a dip because he's not a great ball handler, but I think you could force more ball handling situations with him and see what happens. Yeah. I would like.
He's got to build confidence no matter what, and you're going to have to take some lumps with him getting better at it to begin with. It's either this year or next year.
Yep, I agree. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Come back with. I had some football rankings. Justin disagreed with some of them, or he had his own. I shouldn't say disagreed, but he had differences. I want to chop it up a little bit. But first, today's show is. I'll leave Justin on here because he knows Built Bars. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at Built Bar. All the great flavors. Justin and I have both kind of gone to them as our health snacks. My favorite flavor is the churro. I don't know, Justin, what was your favorite flavor, or what is your favorite flavor?
Oh, it was cinnamon churro, my friend. But I also like the marshmallow is good too.
Those things are so good. And they're like candy bars, but full of protein, not a lot of sugar, not a lot of fat, 100% real chocolate, tons of great flavors, and they've gone mainstream. You no longer have to go online to order them. Go to Walmart, go to Sam's Club. Walmart's got the 4-box variety pack. Pharmacy aisle, Sam's Club's got the 13-box. Plus, they have chocolate flavors, almond flavors, cookie dough, marshmallow, churro, etc. It's incredible. You're going to thank me later. Go get your Built Bar now. Walmart, Sam's Club. All right, let's get back into this here. Justin, I did kind of a positional ranking. I just wanted to highlight a couple of spots we were different on and get your take on it. The first one is you have quarterback a lot higher than I do. And again, it's only rankings for 2023, so we're not looking in the future. Literally just for next year. I'm worried if Mordecai gets hurt. I don't really have faith in any backups.
See, I think that what you're used to seeing is Wisconsin offensive play with our quarterbacks, which is the starter for one isn't overly competent, so the backup is always worse. Air raid quarterbacks, for the most part, tend to click a lot easier than it does for the style of offense that we're used to watching our quarterbacks in. I personally think that a guy like Evers, you have some flexibility with because, number one, the playbook's not going to be incredibly daunting. And number two, he's kind of got a little bit of that get out of jail free card to an extent, where if he's not super comfortable in a situation and the grass is green in front of him, he can take off. Mm-hmm. And as he grows, he'll get better. But I think that if we had to play Evers this year, I still think that he'd have been a decent quarterback. He's not going to be Tanner Mordecai, but I think he still would have been a pretty good quarterback for us this year. So the other part of that is the wide receivers are completely reliant on whatever the quarterbacks do. So we can love them, but if a quarterback goes down, they're going to take a dip too. So no matter how much talent is in that room, it always one is handcuffed to the other no matter what.
You keep sleeping on my guy, Braden Locke.
I am. But that's because I think it's easier to get by on athleticism than having to do all the other stuff when you're a quarterback to begin with.
You know what I love, by the way, because we were talking about this, we were texting each other, and it's just nice to have options, right? Like whether it's Locke, whether it's
Oh yeah,
LaCrue,
either one could be
whether
great.
whether it's Evers, it's just nice to have options in that room. The other one I got a lot of flack for, and I don't know if this was much for you, but I had several comments say I'm way too low on the inside linebackers. Like I think I might be an island on that. I don't see the star power there, but a lot of people seem to. I'm very curious where you are on inside linebackers.
Namji Meta quietly had a pretty good season last year. I don't know how high his ceiling is. I think that he's a guy that I think he's a guy that could crack the all conference list. I don't think he'll be first team. I don't think that's the ceiling, but it wouldn't shock me to see him have 4.5, 5 sacks this next year. He could put up a Sanborn type stat line this next year, where you look at it and it's like, oh, he had 5.5 sacks and he, did a good job with tackles for losses and stuff like that. And that's a great season. There's no Chanel in that group, but there's some guys that are like Aiden Vaughn when you brought him up, and he's a guy that I'm really high on. I think that he's a guy that now that he's got a year in the system, we could see some things he may start to show. But I think there is a lot of depth in that group, and I think that the level of play there is it's going to be a very consistent and a very solid group in terms of play. And I think that there's a chance that they are above average quality. Like it could be a good core in that group.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I just feel like
I'm higher on the defensive line than you too.
I know.
But that's because I actually think they'll be solid against the run. I'm concerned with the pass rush.
I agree with you there, though. Actually, I think it'll be good against the run. I don't know who in the world's getting to the quarterback next year. Somebody will step up.
Low key, I know that you're very low on Peterson, but his numbers are not super different than what we had with who's the one that got drafted by the Saints a couple years ago. Oh man, why am I?
Oh, you're talking about Zach Bond.
Yeah, Zach Bond. He had like 2.5 sacks the year before. Now the numbers are not going to be quite exactly the same because Bond played a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had more snaps, so he had a lot more pressures and stuff like that. But we saw quite a few pressures out of Peterson too. He just wasn't getting home. So I think that he's possible. He could have a 6-sack season, and we'd be like, "Oh, okay." And I think Petroyski is a guy that I actually think he'll be good for us this year. I could see him getting a 7 too.
He was really good for Michigan State 2 years ago. He just has to make it sounds like he's healthy. I don't think it's that I'm super low on Peterson. I think I just expected more from him this year. I expected to see more, but you're totally right. Like someone's going to step up. It's not like nobody on this team is going to get to the pass rush. Or
there's talent there. I think that the expectation was we had so many highly recruited guys that we just expected somebody to be ready. And if you look at the outside linebackers, the guys who were freaks and were ready to play from day one were more outliers than the regular occurrence. Like even, you look at it, TJ Watt took several years, but that was injury related with him. He probably would have been good from the get-go, but Bond was late. We had most of the other guys that were in that group that we've had that weren't stars, that are like high-end NFL guys, took a few years and were normally junior or senior players when they started to really take off.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a very fair point. All right, y'all, we're going to wrap it up now. Do appreciate everybody. Appreciate Justin. I'm sure we'll get more comments that we'll respond to. Again, if you disagree with our takes, throw it in the comment section. We'll talk about it. I think it makes us all smarter when we disagree. Do it respectfully. But, yeah, I like chopping that stuff up. On Wisconsin, and we'll talk to y'all later.